Hello students, welcome to the channel. In today's video, we'll do a vocabulary drill, words in context, the kind of questions that you see on SAT and ACT reading. This is the fifth such drill that we are doing on the channel. I'll link to the other drills in the description box, so do check those out. Question 1. Anthropologists are increasingly looking for small-scale natural experiments that test how climate change affects human societies. So one of the things that you should keep in mind while doing vocabulary questions is to figure out a word on your own that you think would replace the word in the question. And once you are certain of a word, then look for synonyms or the best replacements for that word from the options. So when I say that anthropologists are looking for small-scale natural experiments that test how climate change affects human societies. So we are basically talking about how climate change has a consequence on human societies, how it can transform or change or act on human societies. Those are the kind of words that we are looking at. So affect is a somewhat neutral word, right? We don't know from this question whether climate change is necessarily bad. We know, obviously, from our knowledge of climate change that it is something that has a deleterious, harmful effect on human societies. But remember that we should stick to what the sentence tells us, right? We should not apply external knowledge. So if we know that climate change affects human societies, we are looking at something neutral, right? Now, damages is a very strong negative word, right? And it cannot be a replacement for effects, right? Since damages, as I said, is negative. So this is not the right answer. Now, how climate change interests human societies, that's a very academic way of looking at things, right? It is a very distant way of looking at things. It's almost like saying that it is a point of interest, it's an area of interest, but nothing beyond that. So that doesn't make sense. Now, shape is a good word, right? Because to shape is to transform or affect or change in some way. So that's what I'm looking for. So I'll keep this. And involve is not the right word in this context. I'm not saying that climate change involves human societies, right? I would say involves when I'm trying to say that, let's say climate change involves rising temperatures, climate change involves more greenhouse gas emission. So I would basically list out the factors that make up climate change if I were to use involve. But if I'm saying that it affects human societies, I would prefer shape. So the answer is C. Question 2, seafaring people finally succeeded in reaching the islands. Over the following centuries, their descendants colonized virtually every habitable scrap of land. So here I'm talking about seafaring people, people who traveled by sea and they succeeded in reaching some island. And then over the following centuries, their descendants colonized virtually every habitable scrap of land. So what I'm trying to say here when I say virtually, so I'm trying to say almost every habitable scrap of land, right? I'm trying to say that whatever habitable scrap of land, whatever piece of land that could be inhabited was kind of taken over by these descendants. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, if you look at physically, they colonized physically every. First of all, physically is redundant because if you colonize, that means that you have physical occupation over that land, right? And that's not what I mean when I say virtually every. I'm saying almost every part of the island that could be inhabited was colonized. So it's not right. Nearly is a good answer, right? Because when I say the descendants colonized nearly every habitable scrap, that means almost every habitable scrap. So I like this. Okay, ultimately has a sense of time, right? So I could say that ultimately they did something. Ultimately, they decided to finish the project, or ultimately they decided to give up on this task. That doesn't make sense here because here I'm saying that nearly every scrap of land was colonized, right? I would say ultimately as a replacement for this, right? Because if I say over the following centuries, I could say ultimately after many, many centuries. But it wouldn't be a good fit for virtually, so that's out. And naturally doesn't fit the context at all because, first of all, there's nothing natural about colonization. Colonization is something that human beings do. It doesn't happen organically. So even meaning wise, this word doesn't fit this sentence. And obviously it doesn't mean almost or nearly. So the best answer is option B. Question 3. Within a short span, enormously diverse island environments were settled by colonists, all of whom stemmed from the same founding population. So this seems to be related to the previous question, previous sentence, where we saw that, there were these populations, there were these seafaring men who had come to dominate the island, and then over the coming centuries, their descendants colonized every scrap of land. So it says enormously diverse island environments were settled by colonists, all of whom stemmed from the same founding population. So all of whom came from the same founding population, all of whom traced their origin to, right? They basically trace their origin to the same founding population. So can I use the word derive? No, I don't think so, because you can't really use derive in the context of a population coming from an ancestor, right? You use derive to talk about ideas, right? Or you talk about equations, math, right? For example, this derives from that math concept, right? But it can't be used in the context of a population coming from an ancestor. So this is not right. Similarly, develop is not really used in the context of human population. I can say that this area developed after 1990s boom, or this theory developed from many ideas that were prevalent at the time. But I wouldn't use it to talk about human populations. Emerged also wouldn't fit the context. I'm not saying that they emerged from. Emerge has a sense of kind of, coming out from something that was hidden before, right? So for example, the lava emerged from the volcano in huge gusts, right? So it doesn't fit the idea of a population tracing its origin to an ancestor. Originated is a good word, because to originate from the same founding population is to kind of come from the same population, the same ancestor. So in context, the best answer is option D. Question 4. The drawbacks of being a hunter-gatherer are so obvious. They had to work hard to gather food and lacked such elementary material comforts as soft beds and adequate clothing. So here we are talking about the disadvantages, the drawbacks of being a hunter-gatherer. They had to work really hard to gather food, and they lacked such elementary material comforts, such basic material comforts, right? Such fundamental material comforts, right? As soft beds and adequate clothing. So they didn't even have these basics to use. So do I mean average? No, I'm not talking about average. Average is something which is neither the best nor the worst, something in the middle. So that doesn't fit the context of basic material comforts. Okay, ordinary material comforts would not make sense in this context, right? Why? Because when I talk about ordinary, I can probably say ordinary in terms of something that is common, right? Something that is so common that it doesn't even excite interest, right? But here we are talking about hunter-gatherers, right? And for them, the idea of a soft bed or adequate clothing was not an ordinary idea. It was a basic necessity, right? So I would prefer basic over ordinary. So I don't like B. Basic, definitely, right? When I was thinking of words, fundamental basics came to me, so I like this. Okay, why is essential not a good answer? Because again, essential would be used in the context of something that is needed versus inessential, something that you can do without. But that's not what we are saying here, right? We are saying that life was hard for them because they lacked even the basic comforts, right? So the idea of basic comforts is what the sentence is trying to stress, right? So I think the best answer here would be option C. Question 5, there exist cases of hunter-gatherers who refuse to accept the supposed blessings of agricultural food production, opting to remain hunter-gatherers. So again, this seems connected to the previous question where we spoke about the difficulties of the hunting-gathering life. And we know that hunting-gathering ultimately gave way to agriculture, and that led to the rise of civilization. But this sentence tells us that there were cases of hunter-gatherers who refused to accept the supposed blessings, the supposed advantages, right? That's a good word in this context. The supposed benefits is another word I can think of agricultural food production. So they refuse to accept these benefits and they continue to remain hunter-gatherers. Now, which sentence uses blessing in the same context as used in the sentence above? Okay. May God continue to give us his blessing. So this is the very obvious meaning of blessing, right? When you talk about blessing as receiving some sort of grace from the Almighty, right? So that doesn't mean advantages or benefits in the way the author has used it. So I don't like A. He gave the plan his blessing even before it was announced, which is to say that he gave the plan his consent, right? He said, it's okay, go ahead with the plan. So again, that does not mean advantages. So I don't think it's B. Great intelligence can be a curse as well as a blessing. Now, this seems good because if I say great intelligence can be a curse, it can be something that puts you at a disadvantage. It can be something that could be harmful, but it can also be a blessing. It can also be hugely advantageous and it can be hugely beneficial. So this blessing is kind of referring to the blessing in terms of advantageous or beneficial, right? So I'll keep this for now. The leader called the party's victory in the elections a blessing from the people. So a blessing from the people is kind of to say that, the people accepted us, the people showered us with their love, so this is kind of saying that, we are grateful for people's love. So blessings here refers to people's acceptance of the political party. So again, it doesn't mean advantages. So I don't think D is the answer. So the best answer is option C. So as we discussed, the trick to get vocabulary questions on SAT and ACT reading right is to first think of a word that you think would work in the context of the question, and then look for synonyms for that from the options, right? That is the foolproof way to get this right, because if you jump to the options without thinking of a word yourself, then the options can confuse you. Hope this exercise was useful. Hit like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comment section what other videos you'd like me to upload. I'll see you guys in a new video soon. Take care. Bye-bye.